Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, May the 18th, 2026, and today we're talking about okra and the circle of life of a garden. So let's do it. All right, happy Monday, everyone. I hope you all had great weekends. If my voice sounds a little rough today, don't worry. It is not happening again. It was a tournament weekend for soccer, so coaching is basically all I did. And I'm not much of a yeller, but it definitely, after 5 games, it'll take it out of you. And I had a blast. I love those kids, but I am definitely whooped. That does, however, sadly mean that the season is all over, so I'll miss those kids until the fall. But I guess, focusing on farming for the next few months is probably not the worst idea. We are roughly a month away from the solstice, so I got to start maximizing that sunlight, I guess. Oh, and also, I wanted to offer a quick correction from Friday. There were a few commenters who pointed out that hysterectomies are not the only, or perhaps more accurately would be quite a dramatic version of the female vasectomy. Quoting at Renee Lafont, quote, "Kudos for the snipping convo. Although I agree and support encouraging men to participate in birth control, comparing vasectomy to hysterectomy is like comparing apples to watermelon. The big ones, not the sweet babies. A more balanced comparison would be tubal ligation, but still, vasectomy is less invasive and fewer long-term side effects. Cheers for the delicate topic. Always appreciate you." End quote. Thank you. And yes, that is definitely on me. I got a little carried away there. Sorry. But like the commenter suggests, to me, the vasectomy is still the way to go and more reversible and, dare I say, more chivalrous. Although the word shiv is in that one. Maybe I should have thought of a different word. Anyway, switching gears, I've got a big week ahead of catching up in the tunnels on the tomatoes, like getting those all strung and trellised up a little bit better, flipping beds, all the things, as you do in the spring. As you all go through your seasons this year, feel free to send in your 20-second farm video clips to farmermike@no-tillgrowers.com. Just upload them to Drive or Dropbox and share those with Mike. Love to see that. All right, so it is Monday, where every week this year we are digging into a single less talked about crop in a series we're calling Planting and Raving. Today, the crop we're going to cover is one of my favorites, okra. Now, okra is one of those evocative words that, for someone who grew up around a garden in the South, the mere sound of it can make them start itching involuntarily. If you have not picked okra before, you have not lived with the feeling of being killed by 1,000 microscopic knives. But the flavor is special. The texture is, the texture is a little mucilaginous, but that comes in handy when thickening a gumbo, and the flavor is great. So we will talk about okra varieties and marketing the first segment, and then growing and harvesting in the third, as we usually do for these crop breakdown days. And I'm excited. Okra is not the most profitable crop by any means, but it can actually be quite productive in the right situation. So yeah, let's talk about it. It's a crop that hails from Africa and came to be part of Southern and Cajun cuisine through the slave trade, where newly enslaved people of Africa would bring over their family seeds, sometimes tied into their hair, and grow it out wherever they were living in those plantations in the South. The seeds themselves are often used in cuisine as a thickening agent. The flowers are edible and quite attractive. It's actually closely related to hibiscus, but it's generally the young pods that people are after. For varieties, I've grown quite a few at this point, but my favorite is the burgundy red okra that we've been growing and saving seed on for more than 10 years now. It could be closer to 15. I don't know. It's been a long time. There are so many varieties to try, though, from stubby green ones to long red ones. Some are pale, some are dark. There are, spineless ones. And you don't have to live in the southern U.S. or a hot subtropical region to grow okra. As long as you have enough sunlight in your garden, you can grow it all the way up to zone 4 or 5. For instance, you can start it in trays. I usually use wind strip trays, but you can do that to get a jump on the season and transplant it once the frosts have passed for your season. Your season won't be as long as ours, obviously, and ours won't be as long as, say, Louisiana's, but you will get some decent harvest off of that okra plant. And if you want to just have a little okra around, a few plants would be more than enough, and they're very pretty. So how many plants do you need? Well, you will get an average of 3 to 4 pods per main stem per week. Our variety usually produces 3 main stems from which we can harvest those pods. So that's about 9 to 12 pods per week per plant during the peak of the season. And usually we are selling roughly 9 pods, depending on how much they weigh, for about $3. So if we want to make roughly $200 a week on okra for, say, 8 weeks, we need at least 65 to 75 plants. And that's a decent amount, considering they really can't be spaced any closer than 18 inches apart as they get quite big. Some people will also grow a single main stem and clear off the lower leaves, but I like the bush style, like just have it grow out a little wider. And then it doesn't get too tall by the end of the season, which I've seen certain varieties get like 8 or more feet tall and basically become unpickable by September. So when we select seeds, I select compact plants with 3 good productive main stems, but more on all the planting and harvesting and all that stuff later. Depending on your markets, okra can be a hard crop to sell, primarily because it's one, not very much food for the amount of price that you should be charging for it, and 2, it's highly perishable. We go from the field to the cooler in partially vented bins as fast as we can, but it rarely lasts for more than, say, like 5 days. So yeah, that's some of the basics, but what varieties do you all grow and how far north? Also, I want to hear your recipes this week. And I mean, every week, but definitely this week. My favorite with okra, if I'm being honest, is actually pasta sauces. It's underrated in a pasta sauce. The meaty flavor, and it adds, that adds something special. And again, it's great for the thickening part. Obviously, fried okra is the jam, but let us know what you all would do with it, and we'll get back to actually growing it shortly. But first, let's take a philosophical question about death, but in the farm and garden sense. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything: custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. Their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by Good Agriculture. If the season is picking up and the pile of receipts is starting to grow, you're not alone. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping so you can stay ahead of the mess before it piles up. They keep your books organized each month, help you understand what's coming in and what's going out, and show you where your farm stands so you can make better business decisions throughout the season. If you're behind, they'll help get everything caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. That's goodagriculture.com/info. All right, back to the show. A quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Catherine Henning, who asks, quote, "Your recent pest episode reminded me of my employees and their perspective on pests. They have a hard time reconciling that we need to manage pests and then actually taking life. From our invasive snails to gophers, rabbits, and squirrels, any advice on how to help them recognize their role in the quote-unquote circle of life," end quote. All right, well, great and challenging question here, Catherine. Perhaps, obviously, there is not going to be any perfect one-size-fits-all answer because each person who is going to be concerned about these things is going to have maybe different reasons for that concern or just different experiences with wildlife. And also, different farms have to deal with different pests. Most people live in a world quite removed from wildlife too, and the challenges that wildlife presents. So when their first interaction with them is, well, killing them, I think it can take some time to adjust to that. So here's how I would think about this and or how I would approach it. First, it's good to start with doing everything you can to, help manage the pests ecologically, encouraging birds and beneficials and all the rest to do some of that, killing for you so you don't have to. The reason I start there is because then you have something to point to say, as we, as a farm, get better at building, the ecology here, putting in effective fencing and birdhouses and all the things, we can do less and less physical intervention ourselves. It just takes a long time to get to that point. So then they know it's not in vain, that you're working towards something and they're a part of that. It's also fine to just gently, lay out the economics of a farm to employees so they understand kind of the business in general and explain that, this is a business with really tight margins. If a gopher destroys a bed of X crop, that is a lot of money wasted and revenue lost. Enough losses like that, and it's one less employee or 2 less employees that you can hire. And eventually, perhaps it's 1 less farm or 2 less farms that exists. Also, I assume you are burying the gophers or rabbits, etc., in compost or wood chips that are being spread back onto the farm somewhere. That's an easy tie-in with the circle of life idea. You're taking it in one form and turning it into food in another, especially for things like rabbits, gophers, etc., but even for things like snails. Not to be insensitive, but these are all proteins, and protein is just nitrogen in the raw. I think it is also really good and important to empathize with people who find these things troubling, because it is troubling. It is hard. It should be. And I'm not suggesting our dear Patreon member feels this way, but in general, as a society and as farmers, we shouldn't get desensitized to taking life. We should do it judiciously and make sure that we're doing it responsibly. We can't just think of it as some necessary duty. It should always be a little hard, and it should never be done in vain, especially in the sense that you're always working towards this ecological control versus, like we're always just fighting something. And of course, like you sort of allude to there, we should not ever forget that we are part of the circle of life. Obviously, don't lecture employees about human exceptionalism, but it is easy to get caught up in this idea that there is wildlife and then there's humans, but there is only nature. Humans included. But yeah, I think it's okay for people to have negative response to the reality while also learning why it's necessary and how to turn that death into more life. Understanding the latter may help with the former there, and vice versa. When people know their concerns are heard, they are generally more likely to listen as well. So yeah, maybe some commenters have other thoughts on all that, and I look forward to hearing what you all have to say. Otherwise, we're going to take one last quick break, and then it's a showdown on the Okra Corral, which may have to be the name of my first restaurant. Anyway, be right back. Partners. See, it's like a cowboy theme, but with okra. Cowboys ate okra. Today's episode is brought to you by BCS America. If you're practicing no-till or low-till farming, you know that heavy equipment is often the enemy of your soil structure. That's where BCS two-wheeled tractors come in. Built for small farms, market gardens, and regenerative growers, BCS tractors give you the power to manage beds efficiently without unnecessary compaction. For the low and no-till grower, there are two attachments that change the game. The BCS Power Harrow stirs only the top inch or two of soil to incorporate soil amendments and create a perfect seed bed without soil inversion or pulling up weed seeds. And when it's time to terminate cover crops, that flail mower shreds organic matter into a beautiful, nutrient-rich mulch right on top of the bed. To find your local dealer and see the full lineup of attachments designed for the way you farm, head to bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. All right, back to the show. All right, so let's talk about actually growing okra. Okra has a reputation for being highly agreeable crop in terms of how it grows. Hot and dry, no problem. Low fertility, not to worry. Okra likes it when nothing else is happy, so the adage goes. And while yes, that's true to some extent, okra is highly tolerant as a crop and will likely grow in some pretty rough conditions. Your okra will do better when the soil is actually well prepared and the crop is well managed. So like all things, fertile and well-draining soil is ideal. It doesn't need a ton of fertility down, but we usually put some compost and maybe a little bit of alfalfa meal or something down just to make sure it has the food it needs. We start our okra in wind strips most years to get a jump on the growing season. We almost always transplant the okra with another crop, usually a lettuce or something like that at first, just to make sure we maximize the profit there. Or if not that, then we will at least undersow something like crimson clover. Last year we tried teff, and although it worked for a while, the combo of the drought and the length of the season meant that the teff was just kind of in the way and competing with the okra, and then it went to seed, so that was not great, and I had to cut it back, which was not easy to do around the okra. So anyway, I prefer to either interplant it, the okra, in the beginning and or undersow it with like crimson clover later in the season when it's pretty much done, the okra, but not enough time to get another crop out of that okra bed. For spacing, I look for one single row on both 30-inch, that's 75 centimeter, and 48-inch, 122 centimeter beds, because these things get enormous. In fact, on thinner beds, like the typical market garden beds, with your bushier varieties, it can get a little tight, in there when you're harvesting to have two beds next to each other, which adds to the itchiness, right? Because if you're getting scratched from both sides, that's not ideal. So wider beds make more sense, or you could consider a different crop between the beds, like okra bed, something else, okra bed, something else. And then you get a little bit, you may benefit a little bit from that summer shade from the okra. Spacing between plants in the row is around 18 inches or 45 centimeters for us. You can go wider than that, but airflow and harvest gets tricky if you get, go a whole lot closer. Now, during the peak of season, okra is a pick everyday crop. Towards late August, the harvest starts to slow down a bit to like 3 harvests a week and then like 2 times a week. And in fact, I find that it is around that late summer period when the plant starts to grow down that it becomes the most irritating. It gets really hard to harvest it. Like it's saying, okay, you've had your harvest, but let me have my babies now, back off. Now, I don't want to just glaze over the irritation element. It can be very, very painful, especially the first times that you do it. It's like fiberglass. It can feel like your skin is on fire. It is awful, and it will not go away for like an hour. I recommend long sleeves with a popped collar and gloves and pants for harvesting, even if it's blazing hot outside, and it most likely will be. I've grown used to it over the years, but there are also days that I regret being so nonchalant about it because I end up just itching for hours. Like I just took a shower in fine broken glass. Yeah, it feels like you are on a weird sort of fire, and it can be highly debilitating for certain people, including myself sometimes, so be careful. I also recommend trying a few varieties to see, one, which one suits you best in terms of irritation, because they are not all the same. Two, which varieties taste the best. And three, which varieties suit the harvest the best. I like the one that we grow because it pops off pretty easy. If you have to use a knife or scissors or whatever, that's just too slow for me. I need to harvest it quickly and be done with it. Otherwise, it's just not worth it, or I have to charge substantially more money, which is not going to be easy with okra. One thing to keep in mind when marketing okra is that the red varieties do turn green when you cook them. So I usually kind of just warn people about that so they're not surprised when they get home and they cook them and it turns green. Same thing with like most purple beans. And I just make sure to tell them that I pick that specific variety for flavor and not for color. Also, pick the okra when they are still soft. Like nobody wants really hard, stiff okra. They want it when it's still soft. And it depends on the variety. All the varieties are different. Like some of them get soft when they're still really small, and some when they're really long, they can still be soft. That will entirely depend on the variety. But once they get to that stiff stage, at that point they are, a seed pod, and you can just let them mature and, use the seeds either for your next year's crop or for your kitchen. Otherwise, okra just likes to chill and grow. It's super easy crop. Very few pests, though Japanese beetles can get down with the leaves a little bit, and there are very few diseases. Such a lovely little crop to have around in the middle of the summer when so many things can go wrong, and the okra is like, nah, I'm cool. It also will make an okay cover crop in the summer, though it's quite slow to grow. It's not the ideal cover crop. I will mix it in with, say, like sunflowers and sorghum Sudan grass or something, and usually get at least a few nice plants throughout the bed, and it'll kind of fill out any gaps. It doesn't share a lot of crop families, so, in that way, it's a good cover crop, unless you grow hibiscus, I suppose. But it's just slow to grow. But I do like mixing it in there, here and there. Anyway, what say you all? What did I miss? How do you like your okra? Let us know. Otherwise, Monday, it's been real. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soul Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of May, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Evelyn O. Qualquire. I just want to keep saying it and trying it in different ways because it looks like a very cool word. But thank you, Evelyn. You will start our story off this week, which this week will be about a guitar player for this indie rock trio called the Wandas. I hope that's not actually a trio. I kind of just came up with that one off the top of my head. But anyway, the guitar player's name is Leslie, but everyone calls her Moore. Get it? Because it's like, you'd think everybody would call her less, but everybody calls her more. Anyway, Moore is amazing. She's great, an absolutely astounding guitarist, a virtuoso. She's not much of a singer, though she can do the requisite backup vocals, but it's her guitar playing that brings people out to see their shows. And the tour is all going super well, sold out shows at every venue. The bandmates are having a blast, making great memories. But when they get to Denver, something happens that threatens to dismantle completely Moore's clever facade. What? Well, that is for tomorrow on not Indie Rock, but Indie Roll. I don't know. I never know. All right. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow. Bye.